someone from a community that has not been represented in politics before or in our municipal or state or national offices decides to be courageous and brave and step up to run for office, it is awesome. We all get excited. We help them in however we can, campaigning and donating and doing whatever we can to support them and help them get elected as the first. We've been fortunate in Maine municipal politics recently to have some incredible firsts. Safiya Khalid as the first and youngest Somali American ever to serve in the Lewiston City Council. April Fournier, the first Indigenous woman to ever serve on the Portland City Council. And Deqa Dhalac, who was the first city councilor and now is the first Somali American mayor in Maine and in the country. This week, we talked to them not about the election, but what it's like to actually serve. It's really important and deep conversation, and I hope you'll join us on this week's Maine Challenge. Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of the Maine Challenge. I am so incredibly honored and excited to have these three amazing women as my guests. All three of them are firsts on their city councils, and I'll do that when I introduce them. But we're going to talk today about what happens after you get elected, and especially when you're a woman of color, when you are a first from a marginalized a community that's been marginalized, what happens and what it's like to actually serve. We have with us today Mayor Deqa Dhalac from South Portland, and she is a member of the City Council. She is the first Somali American woman ever to be mayor in Maine, certainly of any city, and certainly of South Portland. We have April Fournier, who is a city councilor in Portland, and she is the first Indigenous woman to serve on that body. And then we have Safiya Khalid, who also is a Somali American woman, the first woman elected in Lewiston, the youngest woman ever elected in Lewiston, and I believe the first woman of color, of any color, right, and to serve in the Lewiston City Council. So you have all overcome incredible obstacles and challenges to just get to where you are. So let me say, and I know that running for office is not always all that in a bag of chips. Hopefully in the Zoom format, we'll be able to get at some of the issues that I think are so important for people to hear about. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excited to be here.
Great to have you. So let me start by saying it seems to me that there, in all of three of your races, there was a lot of excitement among allies and progressive communities and people who really wanted to help you from the individual level to the organizational level. There was a lot of just incredible excitement, and mostly because of who you are as individuals and what you do and what you stand for, and because you were people who had not yet been represented, and we all know how important a seat at the table is. So there was that I would say, is that accurate for all of you, that there was excitement and support from not just your own communities, but from around the state and, to help?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess my question is, so then what? So you get elected, inauguration happens, everyone is there, and then what? When the day-to-day grind of actually serving on a council, tell us a little bit about what that's been like. And maybe Deqa, you could start, and then the other two can follow.
Yeah, I mean, it is really something that is new to you. And at the back of your head, you know that a lot of people are not really happy where you're at, whether they are from here or outside the country. You getting all of those, hate mails and emails and all of those kind of things, on top of what other people are asking you to do for your constituents. So it's always, having all of these piles of things that, the regular white city councilor is not experienced in daily basis, because you're making this, you're breaking these ceilings and people are expecting even more. So it is really very important when we have this kind of a change that is happening in our communities, not to only support when we are running for the office, but stay on with us and check on us and say, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? And when I tell somebody who is asking me, how are you doing, Deqa? And I tell them that I'm getting hate mails, but I need to be focused on what the policy making is. What am I doing for my community? And what am I, things that I have to focus on. I would love somebody to talk to me on the side and say, how are you? So that I can talk to them about all of these, hate mails that I'm getting, or all of the people who are not really acknowledging this hard work that I've been doing, not only for the 4 or 5 years that I've been on the council, but the 10, 15 years that I've been part of this community. So I just want people to not, help us what we're running, but also check on us and stay on, because that's what Ally is all about.
Yeah. And April, is that similar to your experience?
Yeah, I think one of the things that you're not necessarily prepared for is when you're an elected official and people, your constituents are sending you emails. I think I thought it would be, sidewalks and streetlights and, I'd like to do, this policy. And right out of the gate in Portland, we were talking about the historic district, which is, a very contentious issue. From my perspective, I see it as something that's fraught with racism and has a very racist history. And just bringing that sort of language to the table right out of the gate got hackles raised very quickly. And so what I find really interesting is, as we bring up different topics, that if it has to do with racism or any sort of marginalization, and we're giving it a name and we're giving it space and we're giving it airtime in this arena, it's very uncomfortable for these communities. And we were talking about just a park in Portland. And one of the questions that I brought up as we were talking about renaming a park was, what sort of work have we done? From a Parks and Rec perspective, from this research that we've done, from land transactions, to look at the first occupants of this land. It is the site of, a very bloody battle between the indigenous tribes who occupied here and the settlers. How are we recognizing that as we're doing this naming convention? And should we really rename it for the people that took the land, or should we consider, returning it to one of the original inhabitants? And just I think it was even while we were still in the council meeting, I just started seeing my Gmail go ding, ding, and ding from people that, whether they work on, the land trust or the Parks Commission, or, just, I'd like to have coffee. I'd like to talk to you, or, I'd like to give you this information. When people don't have to have a face-to-face conversation with you, when they don't have to, engage in person, I think that also takes off some of the hesitance that people would have for just unleashing verbal and racial assaults. And I think, to Deqa's point, what we see coming into our email inboxes gets very personal and can become very racially charged. So that it wasn't something I was necessarily prepared for. And now a year in, I don't want to say that you become desensitized to it, but it's almost like, well, don't need to read that one. I'm going to move on to the next thing.
Wow. And Safiya, I know that was certainly something that you had to deal with as well, both in person and on social media, and not just from Maine, but nationally. It's been your experience as well?
Yes, definitely. There, as you said in the beginning, there was a lot of celebrations of my campaign, a lot of people who had my back. And when I was running and when I was deciding to run and throughout my campaign trail, but after I won and it was yay, after that it was just silence. And I think that's where I felt I need the most crucial support, both emotionally, mentally, and strategically, that I was not provided, either by allies, by mainstream organizations, by those who have donated, by those who made good comments and wrote op-eds, etc. Everything was silent, and I think there's two steps to, especially for POC elected officials. There's two stages. The first stage is like the campaign, where we of course need the support, but the most important one is sustaining that term and being in that term for as long as we can to pass policies that are needed and changes that are needed in the community. But there's a disconnect, and I think it's the system and it's the institutions and it's the policies that have been passed previously that continue to disable us to pass good policies that are needed for our generations and for our communities and for people who are coming in. as April said, I personally have become desensitized to hate. There's, when I was running, many people say, oh, you got to grow a hard skin, you got to grow thick skin, etc. And I think that's what I've done. Whenever I got an email or even from colleagues, even just general public, I have no more emotions to it. And it's not funny, but it should not be that way.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about sort of what happens, because as you all have brought up that there's the sort of personal attacks that happen, and a lot of it happens on social media, and then there's the policy thing that you talked about, April. But it's sort of this combination of, I guess I was trying to separate it into two buckets, but it can't really be separated, can it? Because it's like just bring that lens.
Yeah.
Right. Every policy, like it's not like, oh, we're going to have a policy on racism, why don't we talk about that? It's like from naming a park to where the buses are going to run.
I think so the policies and like the racism and all that, they're very tied to each other. And like it comes from the public, it comes from city administration, it comes from other counselors and other colleagues. And like it's disagreements, and the disagreements are rooted in our oppression and the things that we need to create and like we need to change. So it's that disagreement that people say, oh, it's just we need to find common ground, or we need to find a way to work together. But it's the policy that you're trying to pass and support or not support is rooted in systemic oppression. It's literally the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, Safiya, because I think what we often come up against is just these generations of institutional memory and, colonized thinking. And it's always been this way. And I think you run into that in so many different environments where it's like, well, just because it's always been this way doesn't mean it can't change. It's one thing to say that. It's another thing to actually truly believe that and live that and recognize when you have a colleague who is trying to, and I think all of us probably have had moments where, unfortunately, we're the ones having to be the educators to say, so let's maybe not use that terminology maybe anymore, or let's maybe recognize where this history comes from. We were getting ready for a city council meeting, and a fellow councilor was just chatting with another. And, before we go live, we're all just kind of chatting. And someone had mentioned, wow, you've created your own trail of tears there. And it's just like, wait, what? So then I would hope that I have colleagues that would maybe, one, recognize that is incredibly problematic, but two, call it out in the moment and, call in our colleague. So you kind of wait and you're like, is anyone going to say anything? Did anyone else hear that? Is it just me? And when nothing happens, then it falls to our shoulders to then bring it up, help educate our colleague, which, sort of re-traumatizes us as well. It's like, now I have to, pull this person aside, have this conversation. Maybe they'll be on board with, oh my gosh, that you're so right. I'm so sorry. And, thank you for sharing that. And I won't do it again. Or it could be incredibly confrontational. So then we also shoulder that, like, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm not really sure what can of worms I'm opening here today, but if I don't do this, who else is going to pick up that work?
And Deqa, I know you've dealt with that as well, right?
Yeah, and I think I can say that in my city councilors, they are amazing people who are really understanding when it comes to understanding, race and cultural differences and LGBTQ plus community members. And I really brag about this because we have this diverse group of people, 6 women and 1 man. And most of these folks are really, really people who really care about their communities, are really very engaging in their communities. But also when you bring it in that, perspective with that lens, even them, they'll say, oh, I did not know that. So you always have to bring something up, as April said, whether this is going to cause you some traumatic, remembrance or, history or whatever, but you have to do it because you are in that space right now and you are that voice, the voice of all people of color. I am it. All people of immigrants, I am it. All Muslims, I'm it. So I always have to bring this up. But the lucky thing for me is that we created the Human Rights Commission when George Floyd was murdered, and that took a lot of things off of my shoulders, and they really come up with a lot of good information and education within the community, within the counselors, within the city staff. So that kind of really takes some work off of my shoulders, and really appreciate some of the good work that they do. And we did the first Indigenous people celebration in South Portland, where we have my friend April came. We had Juneteenth celebration. So we are doing so many different things, and it wouldn't happen if it was not for the counselors. But then on the flip side to that is when I get hate emails, and I don't see anybody responding,
Right.
It just, I'm keep on looking at the email. Then one of my city councilors really responded, and I was like, I felt so good, and I was so happy she did that. And I had to, I text her and said, thank you so much for standing up for me, but I would like to see more city councilors standing up and saying, this is not our community. This is not something that you should be saying in our spaces, in our city, and, have that power to say it. I will appreciate if I see more city councilors really responding and saying that.
So I wanted to comment on a comment Deqa said about perspectives. And Deqa is really lucky that she has colleagues and counselors who are supportive and who are progressive, etc. But there are people like me or maybe April who are not the same. And when I bring a perspective, it's based on my lived experience and my background and the community that I am coming from, right? But I'm labeled divisive. So it's a whole new thing, and I don't know where we need to, change. And it comes to representation, right? We need to have people who can relate to the people who live in the ward, and to people who look like them, people who have the same experiences, because policy is really rooted in your background. And many counselors are privileged, and they just bring their white privilege hat when they're making changes. So Deqa, you are lucky.
Yeah.
Unlike us.
I think one of the things I'm hearing that's so important is the number of roles that you have, right? You're the glass ceiling breaker. You're the representative, as you said, Deqa, of all people, like every single person of color. And then the expectation is that you will be perfect on every issue.
Yes.
Do you feel that expectation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think if we so much as, I know, at least when I'm crafting a response, whether it's a social media message or I'm giving an interview, or even when I unmute my mic during a council meeting to speak, I have spent, and this is true, at least 30 minutes, if not more, trying to think of every possible way that I could say what I'm going to say, how people might take that on the other end, and what are the potential, backlash or negative reactions that I might get if I say this, holding the identity that I hold coming into the space that I'm coming into. And so I would just also, wonder if, our allies that are so quick to jump in and help ever have, that understanding of whenever we're speaking in any format that we're speaking, I know, at least for me and Safiya and Deqa, this might be similar for you. We have to really be incredibly mindful about how we say and what we say, because there is no room for error. We are held to a different standard. We are expected to be perfect. And if we're not, we're going to hear about it.
So for people who are getting a little wake-up call, people who have supported you and want you and love you and admire you and respect you and want you to be where you are, and then go away. And you've said a couple of things, just ask me how I'm doing, but if you have just a quick thing, each of you could say something that you wish people would do, that'd be a great way to lead us.
If I can start, it honestly totally makes sense that people don't have time. It really does. You know, there are single parents out there working who have like multiple jobs. There are people juggling with school and, you know, so many things in life. It is completely understandable, right? Just like going into a city council meeting and then sitting for like 5 hours for the last agenda, it's just unrealistic. So I understand. I just want to say that. But I think just because we also post on social media, right? Where if there's something coming up or there's a certain agenda item, I try to put 2 items on the agenda, and I didn't have community support, but I knew that there was many people in the community who would have supported, but they just were not present, and therefore the vote did not happen. But I did post it on my social media. So just like this, and even if you cannot look at social media, there's newspapers who put write articles about things that are coming up. Just being more present, and available would been so helpful. And also, I am not on the Lewiston City Council anymore. I did not run for a second term. I'm going to school, but I will be back.
Yes.
Sooner to say that.
Don't doubt that for 1 second.
Yeah.
That's great. So show up. All right, April.
One of the things that I recognized is it's wonderful to be the first, and everyone is very excited to have you in their camp or be able to say, look, we helped get the first, so-and-so identity elected. But then, really stepping away from the transactional nature of that. So I am not inclined to have organizations and groups profit off of my identity just to leave me flapping in the wind when times get hard. And so I think the things that, not only individuals, but groups can do when you have people that are, one, part of this marginalized identity group, but also incredibly vulnerable to these spaces that have white privilege and white supremacy, show up. It doesn't end at election day. It doesn't end when we get sworn in. So any way that you can continue that, visibility. So as Safiya mentioned, boosting the messages so that they reach more audiences, just checking in, as Deqa said, to make sure that we're doing okay, especially if something, incredibly difficult has come up. There are some days where last week was a really difficult week because we made some hard decisions on city council. By Wednesday, I had no energy to make dinner, if I'm being honest. Like, I came home, I shut down. I was just like, I can't even think 5 minutes from now. And we ended up going to see a movie instead. But, checking, are there times where you can send one of your elected officials, if they're a friend, can you send them a meal or bring them some comfort food and say, I'm going to take this burden off of your shoulders today because I recognize that this has been a really hard week for you. This is not a full-time job. Supposed to be anyway. It's not compensated as a full-time job, but the expectation that we give this every ounce of our being, every minute of our attention, every piece of our responsiveness is very, very high. And I would say even higher for us as women of color. And I, still work a 40+ hour a week job. I still have 4 children. I have my husband, God bless him, for putting up with this. And so this is an additional burden that we've taken on, even though we are very incredibly strong individuals. The more support we get from our allies after Election Day, as we're going through the daily grind of what it means to be an elected official within a municipality, that's what's going to keep us sustained so that we can finish our term, so that we may be able to come back for another term, and so that we're demonstrating for the next group that we hope come after us that it is possible to win your seat and have the support so that you really feel like you can accomplish what you want to accomplish when you're in office.
Awesome. And Deqa.
Yeah, to add to what April just said eloquently, is that we need all the support that we can get. So if we did this, because we did this, we might have some people supporting us, but the core courage come from us. We are trying to change this narrative of never had a Muslim woman in city councilors, never had an indigenous woman in city. So we said, okay, I'm courageous enough to do this. So when we do that, we really, really become vulnerable in our own spaces. We have all of these people who never seen anything like this, who are coming at us in a big ways. So we don't want to be, like a young person like Safiya, who, if she had all the support that she could have get within the city council, within the community, within the allies, she would have stayed. She would have said, you know what, I got all this support behind me. But instead, when we just drop her there and leave her with the coyotes or whatever we want to call it, the wolves, she just like, you know what, I'm young. I have life. I don't want to be in here anymore. Why do I have to put myself in this situation that everybody's coming at me and taking a piece of me? No, I don't want to do that. And she's not the first person. There was also other people who did the same thing, whether they were Black or whether they were white, even if they're young. They were like, you know what? I don't have to do this. It doesn't deserve my time. So how can we really support these Black and brown people who are really changing history? How can we say, yes, this is what we want? Every day when I get an interview, I'm putting Maine in the map, saying that, yes, we are the whitest state, but look at me. I'm a Black woman, I'm an African, I'm an immigrant, I'm Muslim, but I'm the mayor of South Portland. So I'm putting people in the map saying we are a good people here in Maine. But how can you really also do that for me so that I don't run away, right? How can you do that for me? How can you even come to me and say, hey, Deqa, when are you going to do the next thing? April, when are you going to be a state representative? Are you going to run for Senate? I will do this for you. So that's what we need, because without that, we will not be able to be successful. We will not be able to have our children and their children to change. I'm worried, to be honest with you, for this to stop right here, because we're getting all of these negative things coming from even people from outside our state telling us you don't deserve this. So I would say it's not worth it. Why would I want to do this? So if I just step back and everyone steps back, then our children will not say, I want to step in. We need the support from our allies, our friends, and do not use us and say this, oh, you know what, I did this, and they, what April said earlier, right? But how can you keep on doing it and supporting us and making sure that this keeps on going?
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, I'm very sad to say that we are out of time, but I just want to say to each one of you, thank you so much for their courage, for being there, for helping us make sure that this is an ongoing thing, that you're not the first and the last. And I know you have all said that. I'm the first, but I won't be the last. I know you've all said that. And I think we have a huge responsibility to make sure that that's true. And certainly I, as your ally and friend, am going to take that much more to heart and I hope that all our listeners do the same, and that to make sure that we encourage and support, from showing up, helping with policy, being there, to bringing a dinner, offering to babysit the kids for a little bit, whatever it is. I think that we are a better state. Our communities are better communities for your service and for your courage. And I appreciate you. I love you all. And I am so grateful for you spending time with us on Maine Challenge. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.